Hi friends, it's Kayla. We're here for my June wrap up. We're clearly not in my usual location. This is actually my mom's office slash library. My parents are out of town for the week and we took over their house because they have AC and we do not, and there is a heat wave and it's 43 degrees out and I'm uncomfortable. So shout out to my parents for planning a road trip right when we needed some relief from the heat, and I'm so happy to be here, even though the lighting is a little bit nuts. Guess what I do have? A beautiful kitty cat. This is Dexter. Do you want to be here? I don't think he's gonna want to be here through the entire video, but he will snuggle on the floor by my feet. Oh, and I also have, oh my gosh, why did I pick them up like that? 14 books. I have 14 books to share. Yes, I brought all of these with me to my parents in a big heavy laundry basket. I like to organize my wrap up in different ways every time. I thought what I would do this time is try to pair books together, not by like theme or anything, but by actual rating, and see if there's some way that I can connect them. Because this month I really gave out everything. 1 stars, 2 stars, 2.5s, 3s, 4s, and 5s. Let's start right in the middle at 2.5 because I already did an entire reading vlog about these 2 books and they both ended up with the exact same rating. So that's The Ones We're Meant to Find by Joan He and An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hayden Green. Both of these, what they have in common is they are sci-fi, but so are a few things that I read this month. What else can I say they have in common? They both had interesting things to say. Like, I asked you on Instagram if you had any specific topics or questions regarding individual books so I could touch on those comments like I do once in a while, and I find it really fun. And somebody said something about this being surprising that I rated it low because it said so many interesting things, and that's what I would say about both of these. This one touched on like conversations about climate change and privilege and power dynamics, and this one talked about things like social responsibility and fame, and I think they both had stories related to morals in some ways. But unfortunately, a book saying interesting things doesn't make it an enjoyable read all the time. So in this one, we're following sisters C and Casey. One of the sisters has awoken on an island and doesn't know where she is and is trying to survive. It's got Castaway vibes. I thought that survival element was really fun. And then her sister is living in this eco city and there's a lot of sciencey conversations and they're just trying to reconnect, essentially. Somebody asked me if I saw the plot twist coming in this, and I definitely didn't. So that was definitely fun, but unfortunately, I feel so bad saying it this way, but I say this about a lot of books, that I feel like from an outsider's perspective that maybe the author had this really great idea and the book hinges so much or like places such a cool importance on the twist, and then I don't know that she really knew like how to get there or where to take it after. I think it just lacked description was my main critique of this. Like, I didn't get I rely so much on atmosphere and descriptions, and I love over description. So not understanding like what I was seeing at any point in the book and like what different robots and things looked like and what the room looked like that we were in, like I never got an idea of what people looked like. I just ended up feeling very removed from it, as well as the narration style. So I guess what these also have in common is I like to relate them to movies, but like take this movie and add a science fiction element, because this one reminds me a lot of Josie and the Pussycats as far as like unexpected fame and corruption and not knowing what to do with all of this like initial attention and how to share it with the other people in your life. As well as a girl named April May, and she and her friend discover these like robot sculpture statues. It's like a first contact story. Her video of them goes viral, and then there are all of these mysteries that people all around the world come together to solve, to find out what these structures are, what they want, what they're doing. And again, I found it a little dull. I always say that I love reading from an author who's clearly so passionate about a subject, and sometimes it doesn't even matter if I care about a topic, but when they come at it with such passion, it makes it enjoyable. So that's why this is getting a 2.5, is because I do appreciate the things that Hank was bringing to the table regarding his experience with fame. Unfortunately, it felt It's one of those things that if you have followed an author for a long time, you can see the self-insertion. And a lot of April May's perspectives about the world didn't seem necessarily genuine from like this young person's perspective a month into this internet fame. It was clearly from a more seasoned individual. I thought she was a really fun perspective to read from, but the actual plot wasn't something that I just enjoyed reading. Speaking about science fiction, my next one is a 4-star, and that's Hail Mary by Andy Weir, and I'm pairing it with my only other 4-star of the month, which was The Midnight Bargain by C.L. Polk. And these have in common, they're beautiful gold covers. These are both stories that I feel like I have given 5 stars to similar books. But these didn't quite go as far as those books. So obviously The Martian by Andy Weir is what I would compare to this because it's by Andy Weir. I think he really does well at writing like a lonely astronaut in space vibe. This had the same initial like just like broad premise of a man alone in space as The Martian. It goes on a completely different path though, and I really don't know how to talk about it because it's not like the bulk of what's actually going on in the story isn't in the synopsis. It's implied a little bit in the synopsis, but I just need to let you discover this for yourself. If you want to read it in the next little bit, I would highly recommend you read it. Erin from Booked and Busy and I are doing a live show on her channel about this, so you can get all the full spoilers. And then what I would compare this one to is The Year of the Witching. It's really not like, just like this is not the same premise, but like the general idea reminded me a lot of this, and I loved those 2 other books, and I really enjoyed these 2 books. So in this one, we're existing in like a historical but fantastical situation where there's a lot of commentary on the patriarchy and women being controlled and how magic is perceived. There's also a romance to follow and siblings and friendship and all of that kind of stuff. So what I say about this and The Year of the Witching is that they're not introducing like brand new concepts. Like the topics have been discussed many times in many books, but I really enjoyed the world building of both of them. Obviously I'm talking about this one right now. I just feel like I need to recommend more people read The Year of the Witching. Anyway, in this one, basically there is this spirit that takes over our main character Beatrice's body, who's this really impulsive and funny spirit, and she steals something from Beatrice and forces her into a situation with this man, and then she basically has to go through the rest of the book dealing with like her desire to have magical abilities, but the society she lives in not wanting her to have magic, this love interest that she wasn't really planning on, and their impact on magic system. This is a standalone, but I do think it could turn into a series. Not that I think the author is doing that. I could just see a world in which we read more about that situation. And then with this one, Ryland is an interesting person to follow. The book did try to insert some like funny comical moments, a different kind of vibe as The Martian, but is definitely more similar to The Martian than the last thing Andy Weir put out. I didn't find it as funny. I didn't connect with the character as much, but this remains like my perfect style of sci-fi, where it's not about like battles and all of these creatures and space wars. It's about like survival and science and learning. So much of this is like confusing and goes right over my head, but I don't mind that because like, again, the author's so passionate about this science stuff that I'm just along for the ride. Next up, we'll do some 2 stars. I unfortunately have a couple of them. I don't know which ones to pair together. I'm gonna pair these 2 together. Einstein's Dreams by Alan Lightman and The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. These also gold covers, and I don't know, they're about time. Oh no, I know, they're about people's life stories. So in this one, this author imagined Einstein's theories and how he came up with them, and he writes out 30 different dreams about time. So like each story, it's like parables, where we get a couple pages of just like an idea, and you're supposed to take away a conclusion from each one. Most of them are like time is relative, or time is an illusion, or time is valuable. I don't know. They mostly all kick off with like, imagine a world where people perceive time in two different ways. This person this way, this person this way, and like here's why this person did it better because they lived a more fulfilled life. I don't know. This didn't do anything for me after the 5th story that had the same conclusion. Like, I was just tired. I got the point of it. It wasn't going anywhere new. I don't want to piss off any literary critics because this is a, you know, a modern classic, a bestseller, but not for me. But if you watched my 2-part series from last week, you know that I didn't pick it myself. And then as far as the Starless Sea goes, we're following a character named Zachary, and he finds a book in this library of his own life. And it has to do with like the secret society of libraries, librarians, and there's just stories and stories and stories and stories. I at no point really saw the point of any of them. It was very directionless, meandering, but it had beautiful language. In my vlog, I talked about how this reads like poetry, and I can appreciate and respect the art and the language, but as far as a plot, like, I wasn't here for it. I wasn't enjoying really anything that I was reading, and if there was a story that I was kind of getting into, I would just be pulled back out of it and thrown somewhere else. It's hard for me to explain this one because like some people compare it to The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, which I loved, but some people compare it to The Library at Mount Char or The 10,000 Doors of January, both of which I hated. I left the book feeling like I still didn't know any of the characters. I didn't understand a lot of the motivations. I wasn't convinced of relationships. I didn't like the dialogue between characters. There was so much put on like, okay, I just said that I love atmosphere and I love descriptions, but there was so much just regarding like people's feelings and thoughts and not like what was actively happening. And I just wanted to feel a little more grounded, but I understand that so many people love this. As far as a comparison to The Night Circus, I really liked The Night Circus. I gave it 4 stars. So I don't know what happened here, but I actually do plan to pick up more from this author if she writes more. Okay, let's do some 5 stars. How am I gonna compare these two? Okay, well, they both have like an animal in the title. Well, it's a, yeah, butterfly. Tinfoil Butterfly by Rachel Eve Moulton. Am I okay? And Monkey Beach by Eden Robinson. What else these have in common is they're both a little bit weird, but pretty rooted in reality. They're contemporary stories. This isn't a big surprise. This is like my favorite type of book. So in Tinfoil Butterfly, we're following a girl named Emma who's hitchhiking, and after a fight ends up like abandoned. And then she runs into this little kid. That's Earl, that little eyeball, in a tinfoil mask. And this child takes Emma into, how does it describe it? His bizarre, menacing world. It's one of those books that bounces back and forth between current day and like memories that this woman is having of her dark past. And she is hell-bent on protecting this boy and saving this boy. But she also has a lot of internal stuff that she needs to grapple with. The writing gets more and more off-kilter as you read. I don't even know what genre to put this in. It's not scary, it's unsettling, and you're uneasy while reading it. Or at least I was. Like, I didn't know where it was going. The writing gets like confusing and strange, and a lot of the reviews are like, this didn't make any sense, like the ending didn't make any sense, like I don't understand what was going on. And that's just the type of book that I look for. So I would highly recommend, if you like books like that that are about something but are saying a lot of other. And then I guess Monkey Beach has a similar thing going on where we're following a Heisler woman. Tragedy strikes a native community when the Hill family's handsome 17-year-old son Jimmy mysteriously vanishes at sea. So Lisa Marie, at the beginning of the story, her brother is missing off his fishing boat, and then we spend the story going back and seeing in little vignettes Lisa Marie's upbringing. It is a mix of like lighter, joyful stories and really, really dark stories. It was fun for me because this is set in Kitimat, which is in BC, and Monkey Beach is a real place. For the person who commented and asked like what Monkey Beach meant, it's a real location. For the person who asked the vibe, it is slow. It's just an interesting look at this one woman's life and this community, but it has some speculative vibes for sure. And I will be picking up more from this author. I actually have the whole Son of a Trickster series at my house right now. Okay, what's next? I think we need to go to some 3 stars. Oh, interestingly, both of these have to do with smoke, fire. This one's called Burning Girls and Other Stories by Veronica Chenos, and this is Prosper's Demon by KJ Parker. Both of these were 3 stars. I think I said that, which is a bummer because this started off as a 5-star, but I think what happened is I read pretty much the best stories right off the bat. The title story that was originally published, I don't know, like maybe 10 years ago on its own, and then got a bunch of other stories added and was republished like this. The title story, and then Among the Thorns and Rats were my favorites in here that got 5 stars, and the rest of them were just okay at 3 stars. I think a couple were 2 stars. They're super strange stories. Both of these, what they also have in common is they are fantasy. Some of these got weird in a cool way, and some of these got weird in a very dark way. Let me read like the official. The theme is fierce women at the margins of society burning their way towards the center. Oh, my favorite one is listed in here. A young woman in 17th century Germany is intent on avenging the brutal murder of her peddler father. In the title story, Burning Girls, she invests the immigrant narrative with a fearsome fairy tale quality that tells a story about America we may not want but need to hear. Fairy tale, that's a great way to describe this. And then this, I had no idea was this small, and then I was looking for novellas at the thrift store because I want to read more, especially horror novellas. This one didn't totally work for me, but there is a sequel I think that just came out that I might actually pick up. I just don't know that this gave me everything that I thought it would. It was less plot, more philosophical conversations about this man who's an exorcist. He deals with these demons and possession, and I wanted more plot because I don't think I fully, like, maybe I just didn't have enough time, and maybe another book, and like if this becomes a series, that'll do it more for me, is because I didn't get a full idea in 100 pages of what like was really going on. It was interesting, it was strange, and I think I liked it, but it was over so fast. I think I could have benefited from having an audiobook of this just so I could be more told the story. The cover is incredible. Remind me at the end, somebody asked me to rank the covers from best to worst. And also Erin asked me to rank from most memorable to least, so I will do that too. Okay, next up, I can actually do these 2 really quickly because they were both 2 stars as well. I don't know how I'm gonna link these though. Oh, they're part of series. Great, and we know that's not really my thing. This one isn't even the first in the series, so it's not really right to critique it, but it is a detective story. I want to try more detective stories. Somebody asked a question about my relationship with thrillers and like if I'm reading less of them and like why. And I think what I'm trying to do is pick up like different thrillers and seeing if I like them, and like in a lot of cases I don't. I just don't really know these days what I'm doing with thrillers. I feel like the market is so saturated that they all look the same and they all sound the same, and I don't know which ones are going to be worth my time. And I still remain that reading a good thriller is my preferred reading experience. I would rather read a good thriller than anything else, but having to wade through so many mediocre thrillers has really just bummed me out over the last couple years. So I think that there have like always been months where I've read a lot of thrillers in the year and months where I've read absolutely none, regardless if we're looking at like 2017 or 2020. But I think also what it is I haven't had a huge passion for a lot of new thrillers, so I haven't made them a real like featured piece of content on my channel. So that's where I'm at. Like I was saying, 2 stars. I thought maybe a detective story, I'm in the right like place in my life for that, but I was wrong. I still just don't love following people who are solving crimes. And in this one, that's what we're doing. These detectives are in Copenhagen, and there's this series of murders where people from this medical facility are dying, or people who used to work at this medical facility. It was very slow and methodical and procedural. if that's the right word, for a lot of this. And then there was some exciting moments, but I didn't really care about any of the characters at that point to be invested in the action, and that perhaps is on me for not reading the series in the right order. For this one, again, I didn't select it for myself, but I went into it open-minded. I don't love The Wizard of Oz in general, so a retelling isn't something that I was seeking out. I also don't think I love Alice in Wonderland, and that's what this reminded me a lot of too, but a darker version. Granted, I haven't read the entire series, but I feel like this could have just been one book, and we could have saved a lot of time and all of the, like, this was a long book for me to not be enjoying any of it, I guess. I just feel like by the end of it, I was very unsatisfied. Nothing really got resolved, and that's kind of the point because it's a series, but I would have 100% DNF'd this if I wasn't reading it for a video. Again, link down below. Please watch. I read too many books that week that I really didn't like. So maybe not super fun to watch, but hopefully it was worth it for some people for the video. We're following a girl, what's her name? Amy, and she ends up on the Yellowbrook Road and has to do all of these tasks, including killing Dorothy, because Dorothy ended up back there after she escaped, like in the movie, in the book, and she ended up being corrupt, and like the whole world that Dorothy lives in isn't like how people really picture it, basically. I don't think I have much to say about this. I think everyone gets it. Just wasn't for me. And now I'm realizing that I'm actually left with a 5-star and a 1-star. So that didn't work out for my pairings, but what did work out is, here's what they have in common. They're purple. This is Never Have I Ever by Jocelyn Jackson. One of the worst thrillers I've ever read. Honestly, even though being a 1-star though, like, this isn't the type of book that I feel really passionate about my distaste for. I'm not like, nobody should read this, this is like the worst thing, like I'm gonna talk about this and rant about this for the rest of my life. It was just a huge disappointment, because going into a book thinking it's gonna be about a game, and then getting a game for like the first chapter, and then the game is over and the book is just like your typical neighbor ladies who don't get along and are like blackmailing each other. Like, that's just not a story that I've learned that I totally love, especially if it doesn't really do anything else. Like, it didn't bring in anything else that I found interesting. I was not convinced of how like manipulative and dangerous this woman was. All of the twists and reveals were distasteful, and I've read my share of like problematic thrillers, right? But I just think at this point in my life, this is probably also a reason that I don't know what thrillers to go for, is because I don't know which ones are going to be responsible or socially aware in any way, and this one I feel like just did not care about anything that I care about. But we can end on a great note, because I gave this 5 stars. The Disordered Cosmos, A Journey into Dark Matter, Space-Time, and Dreams Deferred by Chanda Prescott Weinstein. This was a serious ride of a book. It started out talking about a lot of scientific things that, again, I pick up books like this because I want to hear from an expert in the field. I want to hear about somebody who's passionate about something. Even if I fully don't grasp what the heck they're talking about, like, that's what's fun, is learning from somebody. So this author is an expert in dark matter. We were talking about a lot of things about the universe and what we understand of it, and quantum physics, and it really just started out in an over my head kind of way, which is fine, and I was gearing up to like be prepared to feel that way throughout the entire book. And then it evolved into so many different things and ended up being about her personal experience working in STEM. It ended up being about science's responsibility and the people who science has forgotten, the people who science hasn't respected, how many people are involved in science who like don't get any credit for the things that they do, in both the idea of like hidden figures and women who have been ignored in the field, and also just like the combined effort of everybody who makes life easier for scientists to do the science stuff. Like all of the people from like janitors to assistants to partners and everybody who contributes. I think what was really cool is the book kept coming back to different ideas but from different perspectives. So like we started just talking about dark matter and like what that even means. And then in the middle, there was like a conversation about education and dark matter. And then at the end, she brought it back to like all of the conversation she was having throughout here. Like if this field wasn't overrun by white men, it wouldn't even have been titled dark matter. Like if so many things could be different if different people were involved, and it was a more like openly diverse field, and how opportunities are given out differently. So it was more about just like space science, which is what I thought I was going into it for, and ended up being about like social science and political science. I didn't even read this before I picked up this book. Like I was randomly scrolling through, I think Libro FM one day for just a nonfiction audiobook, and this one popped up and I just started listening to it and I was so into it. But then there's a lot of like graphs and stuff, which the audiobook I think comes with a PDF, but once she started talking about all of these charts and stuff, I just picked up the physical copy because I wanted to tab things and whatnot. She talked about the science of melanin, which was really interesting, and then there are these cool images and diagrams and figures to look at while you're reading, which makes it fun. I think my favorite thing about this was when she talked about the actual writing of this book. She was talking about how she struggled writing different parts of the book and how to translate jargon into a way that is understandable. And I think that that's a huge success of this book, is that she figured out a way for the average non-scientist reader to understand what she was talking about. I think this was extremely well written and very thoughtfully written. So that's everything that I read. Now covers. Maybe I'll just show you my favorites and my least favorites. These are my two favorite covers. This is my favorite cover of like the entire year, but I just love the art style, I think, of both of these. They're very beautiful. And my least favorite, I don't hate any of these, but I think it's probably Tinfoil Butterfly, just because I have a thing with eyes. And the fact that this looks so much like my eye really freaks me out. And maybe I love these two so much because their eyes are closed. I don't know. Now, as far as being memorable, this is gonna be my ranking. The ones at the bottom, like, I'm gonna forget all of these characters' names and everything that they did and said after a couple months. There's a couple in the middle that are highly rated but aren't gonna stick out forever. And these are my top 4, just because of the writing itself. As much as I didn't love this, it's a unique story I've never read before. This had very intense language that I feel like will stick with me for a minute. This one, the characters will definitely stick in my mind for a long time. And Tinfoil Butterfly is my number 1. I know this is the one that I would least recommend probably, but Emma and Earl are ingrained in my mind for a long time. I can envision the actors who are playing this. I can see the movie, I can see the vibe. And then a couple people asked like what my surprise favorites were, so ones that I didn't see coming. And I think I'd have to say these two. As much as I went into this thinking this is up my alley because it's got societal commentary and magic, like I knew that it was historical, I knew that it had romance, so I didn't have super high expectations. And then Tinfoil Butterfly, like anytime a book has a super low rating on Goodreads, I hope it's gonna be amazing, but sometimes those books do end up being 1 star. Validly, and sometimes they're incredible, so I'm glad that this one was. Okay, and that's it. That's everything that I read. Thank you for hanging out with me, even though this video may be hard to watch. Also, I don't know about the sound in this room, if it's more echoey or anything. Anyway, I'll see you later in a different setting. Next up is my quarterly and my mid-year updates. So let me know which one you want to see first, and I will do that. Okay, bye.